Well, hi, everybody. Welcome back to the Buckeye Report from the Woody Hayes Athletic Center on Tuesday, August 9th. I'm Brendan Gulick along with Andrew Lind, and this was probably the most highly anticipated day of Ohio State training camp so far because we got to talk to the linebackers today, which of course means we also talked with new defensive coordinator Jim Knowles, who oversees that group. Boy, I'll tell you what, there's a very different feeling around the linebackers this year, Andrew. If only to start, because there's a lot more certainty. Last year, there was so much to replace. Didn't really know how it was all going to fit together. Al Washington did the best he could to make some things happen early in the year, but there were some hiccups for sure. That room got better as the year went along, and now I think there's a lot more stability there.
Yeah, I think that Al Washington really benefited just from having, the upperclassmen and having 4 returning starters, last year or 2 years ago, I'm sorry. And then last year, he was working with a new unit that really wasn't, as experienced, especially coming off that COVID year. And, it was just kind of not the greatest situation. And then this year, it seems like, with only 2 linebackers that are really going to play in Knowles' defense, that and things being a little bit more simplified, at least in terms of like figuring out where your keys are and then just going from there. And it just seems like they're going to be playing a lot better, just a lot more confident and just not thinking as much as maybe as what they were before.
Tommy Eichenberg was the star of the Rose Bowl game on the defensive side for sure. I realized that, the offense sort of stole the show with all the records they set in that game. But Eichenberg's 17 tackles, I think, was a storyline that a lot of people went into the offseason thinking, hey, maybe this group is really starting to figure it out. Steele Chambers with his, move from running back to linebacker, maybe some times last year weren't sure how it was going to look. Those worries, I think, quieted down pretty quickly. And now it sure feels like Steele is going to be, in there as a starter along with Tommy unless something changes in camp.
Well, and Knowles actually said that today, that Eichenberg and Chambers have kind of solidified themselves into those 2 spots. And, they really just have come a long way, especially Tommy. I know we were talking after the Tulsa game last year that he had, the most snaps of anybody on defense, but had no tackles and wasn't really involved. And then, 3 months later to then go in and put forth 17 tackles in the Rose Bowl and have something to build off of, like that's really important for him and just his confidence. And I asked him about that today, and he just said, it was just a matter of, figuring out what he was supposed to do, not worrying so much about other things on the defense or anything like that. And, you really saw that come, to fruition by the end of the year.
There's some depth in that room now where maybe they didn't have that a year ago. Cody Simon played injured a huge chunk of last year. The biggest thing I took away from his press conference today was that he said, look, I felt a responsibility to my teammates to try and play through it because, it was obviously a pretty painful shoulder injury, but, nobody's 100%, especially as the year's going on. Guys are relying on you and you want to be on the field. I admire his grittiness playing a tough position and the way he sort of attacked that. And then he said he attacked his rehab really hard in the offseason, and he looks good and feels good right now.
Yeah, and I think once they come down to just having the 2 linebackers, he's going to add a lot of important depth and versatility to that position. I think it is really difficult when you're a player and you really just want to do what is best for the team and you want to give it your all. And when he's in that situation, he's hurt, he's injured. Well, they're still in the national championship hunt, a Big Ten title hunt last year until that Michigan game came. So it was, I can deal with this until the time comes. And then, once they lost to Michigan, then he, went under the knife, got that taken care of. And now he, after a full, spring sitting out and having time to rehab it, he's back to 100%. I think that, you're going to see maybe somebody who is able to put, his shoulder in there a little bit more than he used to last year. And that's only going to help.
Diamante Traynham was the only guy that I think we were all looking forward to hearing from that did not speak with the media today. Hopefully he'll be available to us at some point during camp here soon, but we did not have a chance to talk to him. And I would love to. I know a bunch of people would love to because I think he's going to factor into this group. He's ridiculously athletic. And maybe they're, it draws up comparisons to Steele in the sense that he was a pretty good running back and now kind of moving to linebacker. But I feel like he's got a little different body type than Steele Chambers does. He looks and feels more like a linebacker, where Steele, to me, is fast and athletic, and just wanted to get on the field and realized running back probably wasn't his avenue.
Yeah, I think that, coming out of high school, they both had kind of the same opportunities. Ohio State really wanted them both as a linebacker in the first place. But yeah, I think that Chip was a little bit further ahead, maybe physically developmental than Steele was. And I think we'll see that. And, I really kind of expect him maybe at the beginning of the year to go through, a little bit of those learning curves, because, he did spend the last 2 years at Arizona State at running back. So, there still is a lot of things that are different, even being in practice versus a game. You don't know what it's like to hit somebody in a game until you go and do it. So it's just a matter of, having some time under his belt and like those kind of things, just so that he can, get more comfortable with it.
How about Palaie Neoteote? Obviously 12 months ago, he was in a really different situation. He wasn't even sure if he was going to be eligible for the season, was trying to figure out the way to get the academics in line so that he could play here. Transferring to Ohio State with really no promise of being able to get out there, just a gut feeling that he could. And now, that stuff so far in the rearview mirror, he's healthy, he's ready, and trying to compete for a spot.
Yeah, I think that was really something that last year didn't allow him to kind of contribute the way that he might have wanted to, because, it wasn't even until the Oregon game that he was ready. And they were talking about how, they weren't necessarily putting him in, in the first team or second team because that prevented somebody else from being involved in those spots. And, it's just a matter of, being able to be out there and not have to worry about that kind of hanging over your head and just play ball. And if they can get anything out of him like that, that's a benefit, especially at this, this 2 linebacker system.
We've talked plenty of linebackers so far, and for good reason, but because we had Jim Knowles and he coordinates the whole defense, there were some questions and comments about other positions too. My favorite comment of the day, I think, is one Buckeye Nation is certainly going to like. Jim Knowles is a grizzly kind of guy. He wears the hat low. You can't see his eyes. He's got a raspy voice. The grizzled beard. He's usually walking around with a cup of black coffee. He just kind of fits the mold of like, hey, I want that guy to coordinate our defense, right? So when he said today, when he was asked about Ryan Day's comments about, hey, we expect to have a top 10 defense, he was asked what he thought about those. And he said, I kind of wish you would have said top 5. That those are the expectations, but he was dead serious. He said, we're the silver bullets. We should be a top 5 defense. Boy, I hope that comes to fruition, because if they can play defense like that this year, we're going to see a lot of wins.
Yeah, I think that, on one hand, we kind of talked about this the other day, is that, even if they had a top 30 defense, they'd be in the hunt for a national title. But I think that, just the effort that he's put forth on defense at Oklahoma State over the last 4 years, and just seeing how they grew, and, they were going up against one of the more pass happy conferences. So it's not like,
No doubt.
It's not like they were a slouch in that respect. So if you really look at what Ohio State's maybe biggest weakness was last year, it was in the back 7. And I think that if he can come in and bring something new to that, then, they have every chance to be that way. They have the talent. It's just about, putting it out there on the field.
And read into it what you will. He made a comment that the Buckeyes at this point in camp and installation are further along than Oklahoma State was at this point in their camp. He said, the team is getting it faster. I don't know if it's any one thing in particular. I'd like to think the Buckeyes have a little more talent, but they're certainly a pretty athletic group, and I'm excited to see what they look like. He was also asked a little bit about the defensive line, and he really didn't want to single out any guy in particular, but he said it was because they're all playing really well. It's also early in camp. We're Tuesday now. The team reported 7 days ago and had their first practice 6 days ago. They just put pads on, but he did comment on the fact that in particular, the interior of the defensive line was creating some push, which obviously Buckeye fans are looking to see this year.
Yeah, that was one thing that was actually, I think, once Tyleek kind of stepped up, was a plus for the defense. I think it was more the defensive ends that weren't maybe carrying their weight. So, for that to kind of continue, that's a little bit concerning to me. Maybe if the defensive ends aren't getting as much pressure, but you would think that if an interior lineman's getting pressure, it's going to open it up for the defensive ends, and then you just go from there. But yeah, I think that might be something that we're really going to have to focus on and see if that ends up improving this year as well.
And then on the back end, he certainly sung Ronnie Hickman's praises. They call Ronnie's position the adjuster, and he said that really fits Ronnie well right now because he's probably the highest IQ acumen guy on the defense. He referred to Tommy Eichenberg as sort of the silent leader of the defense. Hickman's a little more of the rah-rah vocal guy, but a really intelligent player. That showed up last year for sure. I thought Ronnie played great in 2021. Tanner Mcallister's been more in the nickel, and he said that Tanner has certainly been helpful in getting things lined up the right way because of his familiarity with the system. But Tanner and Coach Knowles had a discussion about his transfer here based around Tanner's desire to just flat out be a better player. That was a huge reason why he wants to be here.
Well, I think it'll be really exciting to see just that three safety kind of setup. You know, you mentioned Hickman at the adjuster, and then Mcallister at the nickel, but then you'll also have Josh Proctor coming in, and he missed most of last year with that broken leg. So Hickman might have had to pick up a little bit of slack just because without Proctor they had to rely on Bryson Shaw, who, I mean, let's admit it wasn't the standard of player that Ohio State should expect from its defense, especially on that back end. He was no Jordan Fuller or anything like that, but I think Hickman might not have as many tackles this year. He led the team in tackles last year, but part of that is because the offense was getting to that third level, and that's not a great thing. But he'll be allowed to play a little bit more freely. Tanner will be kind of coaching the defense, and then Josh will be there to make the plays, like be that big play guy who turns the tide. And yeah, I mean, I think that personally is probably what I'm most excited about from the defense.
I feel like the hype is real right now. I am as excited to watch this group, all 11 defensively, as I am to see the offense. There's certainly more intrigue with the defense because you feel like maybe there's a little less, known quantity there, not because of the guys, but new coaches, new system, etc. You feel like you know what you've got with the offense because you've got so much skill position talent coming back, and a huge offensive line that has a lot of snaps under their belt now. But I got to be honest, man, I'm really fired up to watch this defense play this year. I think they could look a heck of a lot more like they did in 2019 than they did the last 2 years.
Yeah, and I said this the other day. I don't think that maybe they have the same star power as they did in 2019, but I think that collectively and just, with the amount of depth and just the talent that they have, that they can put up very similar numbers to that. It'll just be a matter of, getting the install, and just getting used to the situation and just the changing, verbiage and like those kind of things.
So tomorrow, training camp continues, but not a day for the media. We will be back here on Thursday. I know we've got Coach Day Thursday. Anybody else? I'm trying to remember. Yeah, just Coach Day, and that will be back inside. So for everybody that says, hey, we can't hear the questions during the press conferences, we know it's super annoying. And in fact, I voiced that opinion from a lot of you to the audio and visual support staff team at Ohio State. And they tried to figure out a way to make it work. It's just too much feedback. It's a tough setup in the indoor here. But with so many guys trying to go through, at a time, we'd be here for 6 hours if we were set up inside. So good news, Coach Day tomorrow, back inside the team room, and you will be able to hear all the questions for Coach Day tomorrow as well.
On Thursday.
Thursday, not tomorrow. Thursday. Yeah, and we'll go from there. This is this is the time in camp where things start to get a little bit more of a grind. I think the guys are keeping a pretty level head. They're excited for the year. And as Coach Day said last week, they are very cognizant of their opponent week one, knowing that Notre Dame is going to be a really tough task. The Buckeyes have to be ready here in just under 4 weeks' time. And so far, so good from the Woody. Any final thoughts?
Yeah, just looking forward to talking to the rest of the position groups. I know today was our first defensive group, and it'll just be interesting to see how they're picking up Knowles' system and how excited they are to put it on the field.
We've got quarterbacks to come, wide receivers to come, defensive line and defensive backs to come still. Did I miss anybody? Oh, tight ends. We got tight ends coming up as well. We will have a chance to watch the beginning of practice, by the way, on Thursday. That is the third of the 4 media availabilities at the beginning of practice, so we'll try to let you know what we saw on the practice. Morning as our campus report in the Woody Hayes Athletic Center.